Feel like it, yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a culture shock for me. Obviously, Louisiana is nothing like this place, but I've come to love it, and it's become home for me, and really just come home for my family as well. And it's just a cool place. You know, a lot of great people around me. I got a lot of great people in the city, the fan base, a lot of great guys on the team. Every year it gets better.
He's a beast. That is what Aaron Nola has made MLB legends believe when they talk about how much he means to the Phillies. You would think a pitcher this important would be loud. You would think he would scream after big outs or point at the crowd or make himself impossible to ignore. The Nola does none of that. He walks off the mound the same way every single time. Calm, quiet, almost invisible. He does not flip his bat. He does not stare down hitters. And he rarely lets a single emotion cross his face no matter what just happened on the field. Because of that, plenty of casual fans look past him. They want speed. They want noise. They want a pitcher who looks like a superhero between innings. The Nola gives them none of that. So some fans shrug him off as just another arm in the rotation. I am Mason, and this is Baseball Icons. But the people who truly understand pitching do not see it that way at all. They see a pitcher who thinks his way through a lineup instead of muscling through it. They see control. They see someone who studies hitters the way a chess player studies the board. And when men who once stood on that same mound in the biggest games of their lives start talking about Aaron Nola, you learn to stop and listen. These are not casual fans guessing from the stands. These are legends who know exactly what it takes to survive in a Phillies uniform. And if you respect pitchers who carry pressure without making noise, use the hype feature and give this video some hype, because Nola's story is exactly why real baseball fans notice the little things. It is easy for a casual viewer to scroll past a pitcher like Nola on a highlight app, because his greatest moments do not always look spectacular on a small screen. The perfectly placed pitch on the inside corner does not trend the same way a towering home run does. But baseball has always rewarded the players who master the parts of the game that do not photograph well, and Nola has quietly mastered exactly that kind of skill. Picture a Phillies home game on a warm summer night. The stands are packed. The noise never really stops. Somewhere in the middle of that noise stands a pitcher who does not flinch. He does not look up at the crowd for approval. He does not need the applause to know he is doing his job well. That quiet focus is easy to miss if you're only watching for highlights, but it is impossible to miss if you know what real pitching looks like from the inside. That is the whole point of this video. Casual fans watch the surface. They watch velocity readings and highlight reel strikeouts. Legends watch something deeper. They watch the way a pitcher thinks, the way he sets a trap 3 pitches before he actually needs it, the way he holds his composure when everything around him feels like it could fall apart. Aaron Nola has earned that deeper kind of respect, and tonight we are going to walk through exactly why. Here is the idea at the center of everything you're about to hear. Aaron Nola is not carrying the Phillies by being flashy. He is carrying them by being dependable. The 7 legends, each one a Hall of Fame level mind or a Philadelphia icon in his own right, have looked at Nola and seen a different reason why he matters. John Smoltz sees his command. The Pedro Martinez sees his composure. Tom Glavine sees his precision. Cole Hamels sees how he handles the pressure of this city. The Roy Halladay saw his preparation. Curt Schilling defends his consistency. And Jamie Moyer sees the leadership underneath it all. Think about how rare it is for 7 different voices, from 7 completely different eras and 7 completely different pitching styles, to all agree on the same player. Baseball people argue about almost everything. They argue about batting stances, about bullpen usage, about who belongs in the Hall of Fame. Yet when the conversation turns to Aaron Nola, the disagreements start to disappear. That alone should tell you something important is happening here. We are going to count them down, starting with the 7th voice and ending with the 1st, because each one builds on the last. By the time we reach the final legend, you will understand exactly why the people who know pitching best call Aaron Nola a beast. The number 7, Jamie Moyer. Jamie Moyer pitched for a long time in this league by using his mind instead of his arm. He never had a fastball that scared anyone. He survived by thinking 2 pitches ahead of the hitter, standing in the box. That is exactly why his praise of Aaron Nola carries so much weight. The Moyer does not look at radar guns to decide if a pitcher is good. He looks at how a pitcher adjusts when things stop working the easy way. Baseball has a way of punishing pitchers who cannot control their emotions once a game turns difficult. The Moyer watched that happen to countless talented arms during his own long career. Pitchers with far better raw stuff than he ever had. Yet they still faded because they never learned to manage themselves the way he did. According to Moyer, Nola's calm demeanor stands out the most. Even when a game is not going his way, Nola does not panic. shoulders do not drop, his face does not change. He keeps working like the situation is still under his control. Because in his own mind, it usually is. The Moyer has also praised the way Nola adjusts without needing to rely on overwhelming velocity. A lot of pitchers who lose their best weapon start to fall apart. They keep trying to force the same pitch, hoping it will suddenly start working again. The Nola does not do that. He finds another way to get the same result. The Moyer has highlighted Nola's preparation and professionalism as the qualities that make him a leader inside that Phillies clubhouse. Leadership does not always look like a speech before a big game. Sometimes leadership is simply showing up early every single day and doing the same disciplined work, so that younger players watch and learn without even being told to. Sometimes leadership means staying steady when everyone else around you starts to feel the pressure creeping in. Think about what it means for a pitcher like Moyer, someone who built an entire career on smarts and adjustments, to point at Nola and say he sees the same traits. That is not a small compliment. That is one craftsman recognizing another craftsman. The Moyer is telling you that Nola's value is not only measured in strikeouts, it is measured in the way he prepares before the lights ever turn on, and the way he adjusts once the lights are shining right on him. Think for a moment about how rare that kind of trust really is in professional sports. Young players are always watching. They watch how a veteran reacts after a bad inning. They watch whether he sulks or whether he simply gets ready for the next batter. When a veteran like Nola handles pressure the same calm way every single time, it quietly teaches an entire clubhouse how a professional is supposed to carry himself. The Moyer built his own career on exactly that kind of quiet reinvention. So his praise is not just a compliment, it is almost a recognition of a kindred spirit. He watched Nola adjust the way he himself once had to adjust, and he saw a pitcher willing to change instead of a pitcher stuck in his old ways. That willingness to keep evolving is often the difference between a short career and a long one. This is where our countdown begins, with a legend who understands quiet leadership better than almost anyone else in the sport. And from here, the case for Aaron Nola only grows stronger. There is a certain irony in the fact that Moyer, a man who pitched into his late 40s by outsmarting hitters half his age, is the one pointing at Nola and praising his adaptability. The Moyer knows firsthand what happens to a pitcher who refuses to evolve. That pitcher does not last. He fades quietly and disappears from the league within a few short seasons. The Moyer sees in Nola a pitcher determined not to let that happen to himself. The Moyer often talked about pitching as a puzzle rather than a contest of pure force, and that mindset shaped how he evaluated other pitchers long after his own playing days ended. When he studies Nola, he is not looking for the loudest fastball on the staff. He is looking for the pitcher who solves the puzzle in front of him inning after inning, which is exactly the habit he sees when he watches Nola work through a Phillies lineup. It is worth sitting with that comparison for a moment. The Moyer is not a man who hands out praise casually, especially not to a starter who still relies on real stuff rather than pure trickery. For him to place Nola in that same conversation about intelligent adaptation is a signal that Nola's game has layers most fans never bother to look for. The number 6, Curt Schilling. Curt Schilling knows what it feels like to be judged by people who were not watching closely enough. He pitched some of the most pressure-filled innings in baseball history, and he understands how quickly outside noise can miss what is actually happening on the mound. That is why Schilling has stepped up to defend Aaron Nola during periods when fans and critics were quick to pile on. The Schilling has argued that fans often overlook Nola's durability and consistency because they focus too heavily on simple numbers like wins and losses instead of looking deeper at advanced pitching metrics. Think about how easy it is to judge a pitcher from the outside. The A game ends in a loss, and suddenly the pitcher gets blamed for everything, even if his own performance was actually solid. The Schilling is telling fans to slow down and look closer before they judge. The A long season tests every part of a pitcher, not just his arm, but his patience and his focus as well. Injuries pile up around a rotation. Fatigue creeps into a locker room by August. In the middle of all that wear and tear, a pitcher who simply keeps showing up becomes more valuable than almost any single dominant outing could ever be. Durability is not something that shows up on a highlight reel, but it matters more than almost anything else in a long baseball season. The Nola keeps taking the ball. He keeps showing up on his turn in the rotation, start after start, season after season. The A team can plan around a pitcher like that. The A team can trust a pitcher like that. When a rotation has a hole in it somewhere else, having one arm that never disappears becomes priceless. Consistency works the very same way across every single stretch of a long, grinding season. The A team does not just need one great month from a starting pitcher. It needs someone who can be counted on when the schedule gets long and tiring, when the summer heat wears players down, when the season starts to feel like a grind. The Nola's steadiness through all of that is part of why a legend like Schilling feels the need to speak up in his defense. There is something powerful about a Hall of Fame level competitor choosing to defend a player instead of just praising him. Praise is easy. This means Schilling saw criticism happening and felt strongly enough to push back against it. That tells you Schilling believes in what Nola brings to that Phillies rotation, even when the surface numbers do not always tell the full story. Think about how quickly narratives can spread once a few tough starts happen in a row. Fans talk. Radio hosts talk. Before long, the story becomes louder than the truth behind it. Schilling pitched through enough of his own tough stretches to know exactly how unfair that cycle can be, and he has chosen to use his voice to slow that cycle down whenever it starts to build against Nola. It also says something about respect between generations. The Schilling did not have to speak up. Plenty of former players stay quiet about current ones, choosing not to get involved. The fact that Schilling chose to step in and defend Nola specifically shows that he sees real value in what Nola provides, value that goes beyond the simple box score that most fans glance at and move on from. The Schilling also understood something else about long seasons. The fact that a pitcher's true value often reveals itself only when you zoom out. A single bad month can wreck a simple win-loss record, but it rarely erases the deeper skills that made a pitcher valuable in the first place. When Schilling asks fans to look past wins and losses toward advanced pitching metrics, he is really asking them to judge Nola with patience instead of panic. The Schilling has never been afraid to speak bluntly about the game, even when his opinions were unpopular, and that bluntness is exactly why his defense of Nola stands out. He is not softening his words to protect anyone's feelings. He is simply pointing out a truth that too many fans overlook when they judge a pitcher only by the final score of a single game. That kind of patience is hard to find in a sports culture built around instant reactions and daily headlines. The Schilling, having lived through his own share of rocky stretches during a Hall of Fame career, knows the cost of being judged too quickly. His defense of Nola is really a reminder that greatness in this sport rarely moves in a straight line. Number 5. The Roy Halladay. Before his passing, Roy Halladay was known as one of the hardest-working pitchers the sport had ever seen. He was not the kind of man who threw around compliments carelessly. The preparation was almost a religion to him. So when Halladay spoke highly of Aaron Nola's work ethic and preparation during Phillies spring training, that praise meant something completely different than it would coming from almost anyone else. The spring training can look like nothing more than routine drills to an outside observer, but to a veteran like Halladay, it revealed everything about a young player's true character long before the regular season ever began. The Halladay believed Nola had the mentality to become the club's next frontline starter. Think about what that really means. The Halladay was not talking about arm strength or a nasty pitch. He was talking about mentality, the mindset a pitcher carries into every single day of work, long before a single game is ever played. The Halladay valued discipline above almost everything else, and he saw that same discipline living inside Aaron Nola. Carrying a team does not begin the moment a pitcher steps on the mound in front of thousands of fans. It begins quietly, in the early mornings of spring training, in the repetition of drills that nobody is watching, in the hours spent studying and preparing when there is no crowd and no scoreboard. The Halladay respected that kind of invisible work more than almost anything else in the sport, because he had built his own legendary career on exactly that foundation. For a legend like Halladay to look at a young Nola and see the same seriousness, the same willingness to put in unseen work, says something powerful about the kind of professional Nola has always been. It is one thing to have talent. It is another thing to have the discipline to sharpen that talent every single day, even when nobody is forcing you to. The Halladay's own legacy in Philadelphia was built on exactly that kind of relentless preparation, so his approval was never given lightly. He had seen plenty of talented young arms come through camp who looked good in short bursts but never developed the discipline needed to last. When he singled out Nola as someone with a different kind of mentality, it was a signal that this young pitcher was built differently from the rest. That early belief from a legend like Halladay carries forward into everything Nola has become since. The habits formed in those early spring mornings when almost nobody outside the organization was paying attention are the same habits that allow him to keep taking the ball year after year. Preparation done quietly in the past becomes durability that everyone can see out on the field years later. There is something almost symbolic about a legend like Halladay, a man whose entire identity was built around discipline, choosing to invest his belief in a young Nola. It suggests that Halladay saw a piece of himself reflected back, a pitcher who understood that greatness is rarely given and almost always earned through repetition that nobody else ever sees. The Halladay was famous for arriving before almost anyone else and leaving after almost everyone else had already gone home. He measured other players by that same standard. quietly, without ever needing to announce it. The Nola meeting that standard during those early spring training days said more about his future than any single outing ever could have. That belief becomes even more meaningful with the passage of time. The words of a legend who is no longer with us carry a weight that never fades. Every time Nola takes the mound with the same seriousness Halladay once praised, it feels like a quiet continuation of everything Halladay valued during his own remarkable career. The number 4, Cole Hamels. Philadelphia is not an easy place to pitch. The fans care deeply, which means the pressure never really goes away. Every start feels like it matters. Every mistake gets noticed, and every good outing is expected to be followed by another one just like it. The former Phillies ace Cole Hamels knows that pressure better than almost anyone because he lived it for years, wearing the same uniform Nola wears now. That is exactly why his praise of Nola carries so much weight. Hamels has praised Nola for embracing the pressure of pitching in Philadelphia instead of shrinking from it. The boos come quickly here when things go wrong, and the cheers can feel just as intense when things go right. Living inside that constant swing of emotion for an entire season requires a certain toughness that not every talented player actually has. Some pitchers get overwhelmed by cities like this one. The expectations follow them everywhere, from the ballpark to the streets outside it. But according to Hamels, Nola has turned that pressure into fuel instead of letting it become a burden. Hamels has said Nola has become the type of dependable starter every contender needs. Notice that word dependable? It is not the flashiest word in baseball, but it might be the most important one. Every team wants a superstar, but what they truly need is someone who takes the ball every fifth day and gives them a real chance to win, no matter how loud the crowd gets or how high the stakes climb. There is something deeply personal about this particular endorsement. Hamels was once the face of that Phillies rotation. He carried that same weight, felt that same noise, and lived under those same expectations. When a man who understands exactly what it feels like to be the guy Philadelphia depends on looks at Aaron Nola and sees a worthy successor, that is not a small thing. That is one ace recognizing another. Carrying a team is about more than talent. It is about showing up in a hard city, handling the noise, and being the kind of starter a fan base can put its faith in. The Nola has done exactly that, according to a man who knows the feeling better than almost anyone alive. Think about the weight that comes with wearing that Phillies uniform every single day. The city does not forget bad outings easily, and it does not hand out patience freely either. The A pitcher either learns to thrive inside that pressure, or he gets swallowed by it. Hamels lived through both sides of that reality during his own career, which is exactly why he can spot the difference in Nola so clearly. There is also something meaningful about one ace passing the torch to another, even if only in words. Hamels is not simply saying Nola is talented. He is saying Nola belongs, that he has earned the trust of a demanding fan base the hard way, start after start, season after season, without ever asking for an easier path. It also matters that Hamels chose to frame his praise around dependability rather than dominance. Every era of baseball produces a handful of pitchers who look unstoppable for a season or two before fading away. Hamels is saying something different about Nola, that he has built the kind of durable, trustworthy presence that outlasts any single hot streak or cold stretch. Hamels once carried the exact same responsibility Nola carries now, being the pitcher a struggling rotation leaned on when everything else around it felt uncertain. He knows the toll that responsibility can take on a player who is not built for it. Watching Nola handle that same weight without breaking is part of why his respect for him runs so deep. That is precisely the kind of compliment that means the most in a city like Philadelphia, where fans remember who showed up and who did not, long after the box scores are forgotten. The Hamels understands that memory better than almost anyone, and his endorsement of Nola reflects exactly how that memory is already being written. Number 3. Tom Glavine. Tom Glavine built his Hall of Fame career on something simple but incredibly difficult to master: command. He did not overpower hitters with pure speed. He beat them by putting the ball exactly where he wanted it, again and again, until they had no good options left. That is why Glavine's admiration for Aaron Nola's precision means so much. Glavine has admired Nola's ability to paint the corners and work efficiently through lineups. Painting the corners simply means placing the ball near the very edges of the strike zone instead of throwing it right into the easy hitting spots in the middle. Sounds simple, but very few pitchers can do it consistently, inning after inning, year after year. The Nola does it well enough that a legend like Glavine takes notice. The middle-of-the-plate fastball, even a fast one, becomes an easy target once a hitter locks in on it. The corners of the strike zone are a completely different story. They demand a level of control that very few pitchers can repeat consistently across an entire season, which is exactly why Glavine's respect for that skill runs so deep. Think about what that really does to a hitter standing in the box. The Nola is not giving them the pitch they want. He is forcing them to make an uncomfortable decision on almost every single swing. He makes hitters protect the outer edges of the plate. He makes them guess. He turns every at-bat into a small battle of patience and precision instead of a simple test of strength. Glavine has compared Nola's approach to the command-first style that defined many Hall of Fame pitchers throughout history. That comparison is not made lightly. Glavine knows exactly what it takes to build a legendary career around control instead of raw power, because he lived that exact path himself. When he sees the same discipline in Aaron Nola, he is recognizing a pitcher who understands the deepest truth about this game, that survival at the highest level depends far more on precision than on pure velocity. The efficiency matters just as much as precision. The Nola's value does not come from one dominant inning here and there. It comes from moving through an entire lineup with a clear plan from the very first pitch of the game to the very last. That kind of quiet mastery is exactly what legends like Glavine respect the most. Glavine spent his career proving that a pitcher does not need to strike out every hitter to dominate a game. Sometimes the greatest skill is getting an early ground ball on 3 pitches instead of grinding through a 10-pitch battle for 1 strikeout. That kind of efficient thinking keeps a pitcher fresh late into games, and it is exactly the kind of thinking Glavine sees reflected in the way Nola works through a Phillies lineup. There is a craftsmanship to painting corners that only becomes visible once you understand what you're actually looking at. A fastball that lands 2 inches off the plate might look like a near miss to a casual fan, but to a hitter standing in the box, it is often exactly where the pitcher wanted it all along. Glavine spent his whole career mastering that inch, and he recognizes the same mastery unfolding in Nola. Glavine also knew what it meant to pitch deep into games without needing a bullpen to bail him out constantly. The efficiency is not just about saving pitches for the sake of it. It is about giving a manager the freedom to trust his starter deep into a ballgame instead of scrambling early for relief help. That kind of trust is exactly what Nola has built over time, one efficient outing after another. Glavine's era of baseball rewarded exactly the kind of pitching Nola practices now, and part of his admiration comes from watching that command-first philosophy survive and succeed, even as the game around it has changed dramatically. The styles come and go across generations, but precision like this never really goes out of style. When a Hall of Famer built entirely on precision looks at a current pitcher and sees his own approach reflected back, it is one of the clearest signs of respect this sport has to offer. Glavine is not simply complimenting a skill he admires from a distance. He is recognizing a philosophy of pitching that he spent his entire career proving actually works. Number 2. The Pedro Martinez. The Pedro Martinez controlled games from the mound in a way that few pitchers in history ever have. He understood rhythm, mechanics, and composure at the deepest level, which is exactly why his praise of Aaron Nola matters so much. The Pedro has repeatedly complimented Nola's mechanics and composure, noting that he rarely loses his rhythm on the mound even when things start to get difficult. Baseball has a way of exposing any pitcher who cannot control his own emotions once adversity shows up. The leadoff double, a bad call, a sudden rally. Any of it can unravel a pitcher who has not trained his mind as carefully as his arm. Picture what happens to most pitchers when a game speeds up on them. Their delivery gets rushed, their body stops working together the way it should. Their mind starts racing right along with their heartbeat. The Nola almost never lets that happen. His motion stays steady from the first pitch to the last. His body helps him repeat exactly what he wants to do over and over, no matter what is happening around him. Composure is the piece that ties everything together. Talent alone is never enough in this sport. If a pitcher loses his rhythm, the entire game can spiral out of control within a matter of minutes. The Nola's greatest strength is his ability to keep the game under control, even when the situation around him feels like it is slipping away. He does not let panic creep into his mechanics. The Pedro has described Nola as one of the smartest pitchers of the modern era. That is an enormous statement coming from a man who is remembered as one of the smartest and most dominant pitchers to ever step on a mound himself. The Pedro is not talking about raw stuff when he says this. He is talking about the mind behind the mound, the ability to stay calm and think clearly no matter how loud the moment becomes. This is what makes Nola so dangerous in a quiet way. He does not need to overpower hitters with pure stuff because his composure and his mechanics allow him to execute his plan pitch after pitch, inning after inning, without cracking under the weight of the moment. The Pedro understood better than almost anyone how fragile a pitcher's rhythm can be. One rush delivery, one moment of doubt, and an entire outing can unravel in a matter of minutes. That is exactly why his praise of Nola's steadiness means so much. Pedro is not describing luck. He is describing a skill that took years to build and that very few pitchers ever truly master. There is also a certain humility in how Nola carries that composure. He does not perform his calmness for the cameras. He simply lives it, start after start, whether the moment is small or enormous. The Pedro, who understood the difference between performing confidence and actually possessing it, recognized the real thing the moment he studied Nola closely. It takes a special kind of pitcher to earn that comparison from someone who once dominated the league with a combination of pure talent and total command of his own emotions. The Pedro is not comparing arm strength or raw numbers. He is comparing minds, and that is a much rarer compliment to receive from a legend of his caliber. The Pedro built his own legend partly on theatrical confidence, yet even he understood that confidence without composure eventually collapses under enough pressure. That is why his praise of Nola's quiet steadiness feels so genuine. He is not asking Nola to perform emotion the way he once did. He is recognizing that Nola found his own version of the exact same inner control. There is a lesson buried inside that praise for anyone paying close attention. The pitchers who last the longest and mean the most to their teams are rarely the ones who simply throw the hardest. They are the ones who understand themselves well enough to stay composed, no matter what the scoreboard says. The Pedro sees that understanding fully formed inside Aaron Nola. Number 1, John Smoltz. And now we reach the voice that started it all. The one that captures everything the rest of these legends have been building toward. John Smoltz has praised Nola's elite command and his ability to sequence pitches rather than simply overpower hitters. Everyone in this countdown, Smoltz may understand better than anyone what it truly means to win with your mind instead of your raw arm strength. Many fans are naturally drawn to speed. They notice the pitchers who throw the hardest. They get excited watching radar guns hit triple digits because it feels exciting and powerful in the moment. But Smoltz sees pitching in a much deeper way than that. He sees how Nola sequences his pitches, meaning he sets hitters up by using one pitch to make the next pitch even more effective. The sequencing is not complicated once you understand the basic idea. It simply means Nola does not throw pitches randomly. Every pitch has a purpose. Every pitch is designed to change the hitter's timing and expectations, so that by the time the important pitch of the at-bat arrives, the hitter is already a step behind. The Nola does not need to blow hitters away with pure velocity, because his mind is doing just as much work as his arm. The Smoltz has often pointed to Nola as living proof that precision and baseball IQ can be just as effective as elite velocity. That is a bold claim to make in a sport that constantly celebrates speed above almost everything else. But Smoltz lived a Hall of Fame career built on intelligence and adaptability. So when he says this about Nola, he is speaking from real experience, not just admiration from a distance. This is the heart of everything we have talked about tonight. The Nola wins by placing the ball exactly where he wants it. He wins by changing the hitter's look from pitch to pitch. He wins by knowing what to throw, when to throw it, and where to put it, long before the ball ever leaves his hand. That is not an accident. That is mastery built through years of discipline and study. The Smoltz himself made the transition from young power arm to complete pitcher over the course of his own long career. So he understands exactly how rare it is for a pitcher to combine intelligence with execution at this level. He has watched plenty of hard throwers fade once hitters adjusted to their one-dimensional approach. The Nola never had to worry about that fade, because his game was never built on one dimension to begin with. That is the real reason Smoltz's words carry so much weight in this conversation. He is not simply admiring a skill from a distance, he is recognizing a version of the exact evolution he lived through himself. A pitcher who understood early that surviving in this league for the long haul requires more than a strong arm. It requires a strong mind attached to it. There is a reason Smoltz's voice closes out this countdown as the final and most important word. Every legend we have covered tonight, Smoltz is the one who lived the most complete pitching journey, moving between roles and reinventing his game more than once over a long career. When a pitcher with that much range looks at Nola and sees a masterclass in precision and baseball IQ, it validates every single voice that came before him in this countdown. The Smoltz has watched countless young pitchers arrive in the league throwing hard, only to disappear once hitters figured out they had nothing else to offer. Aaron Nola carries the Phillies because he gives them exactly the kind of steady, dependable pitching every real contender needs. He does not need to be loud. He does not need to throw harder than everyone else. He wins with control. He wins with his mind. He keeps the Phillies steady through every long summer and every difficult stretch of the season. Legends notice what many fans miss. The pressure in Philadelphia is real, and few players ever learn to truly carry it. Aaron Nola has learned exactly how to think back through everything we have covered tonight. 7 different legends, 7 different careers, 7 completely different vantage points on this same pitcher, and yet every single one of them arrives at the same conclusion. That kind of agreement does not happen by accident in a sport where opinions rarely line up so cleanly. When it does happen, it usually means the truth underneath it is real. There is a certain kind of respect that only gets handed down from one generation of pitchers to the next, the kind that cannot be bought, rushed, or faked no matter how much talent a player carries. It rarely comes with headlines attached. It comes quietly. In interviews nobody clips for social media, in conversations between people who understand the game at its deepest level. That is exactly the kind of respect Aaron Nola has earned, one legend at a time, without ever chasing it directly. Casual fans will keep chasing the loudest names and the biggest velocity numbers, and that is fine, because the sport needs excitement too. But if you want to understand what actually wins baseball games at the highest level, listen to the men who have lived it. Listen to the pitchers who stood on that same mound in October, with everything on the line. They are not impressed by noise. They are impressed by command, by composure, by preparation, by durability, and by the quiet kind of leadership that never needs a spotlight to prove itself. Aaron Nola has all of that. He built it slowly, start by start, season by season, without ever demanding attention for it. He let the work speak on its own, trusting that the right people would eventually notice, and they did, one legend at a time, until the pattern became impossible to ignore. And now, one legend at a time, that quiet work has been recognized by the very people qualified to recognize it. That is a legacy worth respecting, and it is a story worth remembering the next time you watch him take the mound. That is why, when the people who know this game, the best, sit down and talk about him, one simple phrase keeps coming back again and again. He's a beast.